Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mark Turner.
I'm really grateful. It's exceptionally open-minded of you to invite someone like me to address your conference. Very ecumenical. So I was found by David McNeil in 1983 when I was first an assistant professor at the University of Chicago, and he convinced me immediately of the importance of paying attention to gesture as a window on the mind, as we see in this example from Mike Tomasello, which you saw at the last conference. I don't have a recording of that performance, but for Mike, it is a parade example, and you can get it all over YouTube.
And I will tell you the inspiration for this study here was I was going in an airport, and there was about a 5-year-old child or something in front of me in the walking through the metal detector and being scanned for the air traffic control safety. I mean the safety.
Now what happens is the airport security guard runs the wand over the front of the child and wants the child to turn around so he can run the wand over the back of the child to detect metal. And the guard does this to the child. And the child looks at the guard and does this. And Mike says the child does not have the common ground to understand this simple analogy. But I point out to you, it's anything but an analogy and anything but simple. It's in fact an extremely complicated blend. Notice that the guard wants the child to turn around, but does not do this, right? Does not do an about face, does this. The difference between this and this is galactic. But put aside the topological blending for a minute. Notice that in the blend there must be a child who has intentionality blending. That is, the child performs an action, but not out of its own intentionality, not out of its own imagination or desire. On the contrary, the child must have a conception that the guard has a mind. And in the mind of the guard, there must be a conception of the child, such that they understand that they are in a scene of classic joint attention in which the child understands that the guard means to communicate, and means to communicate a command, so must bring in the entire conceptual frame of a command and of the obedience, so that the child in the blend is performing an action under amazing intentional blending, may not even understand why. But now let's look at the form of the gesture. There is no analogy between this finger and the child's body. This does not have feet, right? The guard does not want the child to do this repeatedly, always facing the same direction. The child must understand that the blend of the finger and the child has selective projection, has emergent structure, immensely complicated. But there's more. Mike is correct, this is a scene of joint attention. This is what the guard intends. The more can be that the child or the tourist recruits a frame of caused motion in which the finger is acting on an object to cause something, the object, to move in a direction. For instance, when you're dialing a rotary telephone, you're all much too young to understand what I'm talking about. Or maybe you're twirling a plate. In that case, the child is not in the blend the counterpart of the finger, but of the missing imagined object which is caused to move in a circle. And again, the child is not behaving recurrently and not moving in a direction such that it maintains the same orientation. On the contrary, the important emergent structure in the blend is the child does not maintain orientation. The child instead turns 180 degrees, right? So why am I talking about blending? Well, that's explained by another blend. I was once at a conference where a postdoc posted to you, the audience, apparently, if you say blending 3 times, Mark Turner appears. Now, this recruits the frame of control over a supernatural divinity by knowing its name. It's Kabbalistic. You know this all even in contemporary films. Beetlejuice, 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 or Chrestomancy. This is all over the Lesser Key of Solomon. It's a very, very interesting blend of agency and power, but you know it all. Mephistopheles shows up in Gounod's Faust when Faust invokes Mephistopheles 3 times. Mephistopheles shows up and says, "Me voici." It's a big deal. It's fabulous. It shocks Faust. He's like, so if you want to know about blending, you can go to the blending website. You will see hundreds of articles, scores of books, conferences, special editions, recordings, podcasts, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that is fly with me to Buenos Aires, where we will have, as the opening of the 17th conference of the International Cognitive Linguistics Association, a 2-day program on advances in blending, or you can just go to my website, and my email is on there, and you can reach me. So with this background and my diabolic dispensations, which you might just interpret hyperbolically, so if you're saying blending at the conference dinner tonight, maybe there I'll be peeking over your shoulder, smiling devilishly, right? Okay, you know how to interpret this, but you won't be surprised to hear me say that gesture studies are at a theoretical inflection point of investigating the basic mental operations that make gesture possible, co-speech gesture possible. And that theoretical inflection point has to do with the investigation of blending. To know a communicative system is to know a relational network of form-meaning pairs. How do you make a form-meaning pair? By blending across radically different things. And to know how to blend those form-meaning pairs into a performance such that the person who sees the performance will essentially ask, what form-meaning pairs do I know which, if blended, would have produced this performance? And that gives them the mental space network they need in order to construct meaning in response to your prompt. So if you want to work on this, just write to me, email, respond. Email. Or actually, it occurs to me, you know how to get in touch with me. You just say, at the dinner. So if we want to study blending, what do we need? We need to be a science. And science needs lots and lots and lots of data. and transparency. Everybody shares the data with everybody. Think of the James Webb Telescope. Up it goes. It gets a ton of data, and it sends that data all the astrophysicists on Earth so they can all test the data, so that they can try to replicate, so they can talk to each other. We need huge scale. We need great transparency, and for us, it has to be multimodal. Well, where are we going to get it?
There have been two criticisms.
So that will be a
really,
question that's
about
raised, but
the
it's
authorities.
Curtain rise.
we really
And
need to be
the
careful
I look
because
at
we
it.
may all be
It's
saying
an
in a few
information
minutes
battle
or a few hours' time, well, actually, it was a gas explosion, and all this political
The opening performance,
contrast to the
a
coverage
choir
of
of
events by the
hard-hatted
U.S. mainstream
construction
media.
workers.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war. I'll be very blunt in my assessment. Al Jazeera is winning. The Chinese have opened up a global English language and multi-language television network. The Russians have opened up an English language network. I've seen it in a few countries, and it's quite instructive. We are cutting back. The BBC is cutting back.
Okay. Well, we're going to get it. In fact, we've already got it. Red Hen Lab always grows. She's not so little anymore. We now have about 700,000 hours of recording of all kinds. Some of the easiest to get is from news broadcasts, but we have data of all kinds, including behavioral experiments, people in brain imaging, pictures of sculptures, folks in conversation, things like that. And what do we do with it? Well, we search it. There are about 9 billion words in this data set so far. I don't really care about the data, I care about the science, but in order to do science, you have to have data. Okay, what do? Well, like you, we tag it.
Yeah, we are in an information
We
war.
have little operations, of course, we also have Elan. In fact, what we do is we extract closed captions, the text. We line it up with transcripts that come from broadcasts. We get the text that's on screen in optical character recognition. We tag for sentiment, some of that's really lousy. We tag for frames, we're trying to do much better. We have visual search, manual tagging, machine learning for automatic tagging. Here, for example, are closed captions. Here are closed captions. So it was a really big deal that back at the beginning, you can't imagine the number of articles that have been published because we could capture the closed captions. These things change now with Whisper and Whisper X, as you have heard from others. We love the data, it's historic, we use it for what it's good for, but in fact we can extract closed captions of almost anything. The ball is moving. This is optical character recognition of the on-screen text at the time. So you can search for sort of anything we've got, and you can see what was also going on at the same time. We tag for grammar in a lot of ways so that you can search for constructions and grammatical patterns instead of just lexical strings. You can get an overview at Künstliche Intelligenz, or you can get an overview in Linguistics Vanguard, but publication is so last century. Just go to redhenlab.org and search, and you will see hotter stuff. So on annotating, of course you want to annotate. Look at this gorgeous gesture. Larry King is going to combine a gesture of whole completion with a gesture of linear understanding of temporality, with a gesture of discourse management, all in one beautiful sweep when he's talking to Reba McEntire.
How long to put the whole thing together from inception to completion?
So you find, okay, well, there's one, we tag it, we know we've done this all the time. How do you find lots of them? Well, I will refer you to Peter Uhrig and Raul Sanchez. We've developed the rapid annotator so that the examples you find can be queued up like a train, and the person who's doing the annotating can just automatically go one to the other and use keystrokes in order to annotate it, not meticulously, but for large distinctions that you want to have. How do you search this big data? It's easy. you go looking for the text, or you go looking for the grammar. So easy to get, as the Dedalus Lab has lots of these.
Like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, how long did that take to find that dress from inception to completion?
Right? Find as many inceptions to completions as you like. And we're talking about 600,000 hours of recording, okay? I'm a linguist. You want to study quasi-absolutives. We don't have absolutives in English, but quasi-absolutives like absent a hurricane, this building will stand up. Fine, thanks to CQP Webb and Peter Oehrig. You just go in, you put in the little code, it finds you all the hits for absent, it gives you the context. If you click on the number on the left, you can then see the person perform this linguistic construction. So if you're like Thomas Hoffman, construction grammarian, and think that there are gestures that go along with comparative correlatives, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, you can say, just find me comparative correlatives. There could be words in between, this is not lexically filled, right? And this is how you find it. And then you get as many examples as you want, and you see the person.
The closer this front gets, the stronger the cool, moist onshore flow.
Okay, I'm very interested in gestures for blended classic joint attention. You all know what joint attention is? Classic joint attention is when you have two or few people who share the same ground, who are actually communicating about something in their perceptual field. Classic joint attention is, hey, Billy, look at that blackbird in the hedge. It has red stripes on its wings, right? Blended classic joint attention is when you have classic joint attention as one grounding, stable input to the blend, but there's lots of other stuff that makes it not classic joint attention at all, like in personal letters or telephone calls, telegraph messages, or broadcast news. So there are certain kinds of visual forms and gestures that call up a scene of blended classic joint attention and that you know how to interpret because you're native in this kind of thing. You can read all about it in Linguistics Vanguard. So here's an example.
If you have any questions about getting the data from your old hard drive to your new hard drive, we made a video for you that covers the process, and we will link to it right there.
Now, you actually know that unlike classic joint attention, where she must point at something, she's just pointing wherever she likes. And the something is going to be put where she points. So she too has divine superpowers. Because in post-production, somebody's going to put something on the screen, and it says here, she says there, but it could have said bingo, click me, whatever. And you know if you click on that, it will take you to a website. This is part of your communicative system. So I analyzed these in this glorious article. Point is, where did I get all these? And the answer is, I get them out of Red Hen Lab. It's very, very, very easy to find lots and lots of data. Copilots for automatic annotating. We made the Red Hen audio tagger, for instance. This is just one example. Because there are many things that happen in recordings that are neither speech nor a gesture. There's all that paralinguistic stuff, pauses, laughter. But there are also sound effects, like the sound of people walking out of the room, the sound of people coming into the room, which might be important for the interpretation of what's going on. Well, the Red Hen audio tagger is a system that takes any machine learning recognizer of sounds, parses them, puts them into the pipeline, and then makes a certain kind of data set that's native to Red Hen, but it also will produce that, because I insisted, in a CSV file, which you can then import to Elan with the automatic import function in Elan. All hail the Max Planck Institute in Nijmegen. And then what this will do is put these sounds into your Elan tiers. You don't have to do anything. It will automatically put them in with extremely good timestamps, saying what they are and how long, and then you can see what kind of overlap there is. Read all about it. It's an example of this kind of automatic tagging. Now, transparency. We need to share big multimodal data, but we're not astrophysicists. The stars do not feel that their identity has been violated if you show a picture of them. They don't complain. They don't sue you. And legislators don't pass laws on why you need to de-identify stars. Right? On the contrary, we're trying to identify stars. But people are a different story, right? So we know how to de-identify textual data that's in Excel spreadsheets or something. We do this all the time in the social sciences. There's law about it. Our IRBs tell us what we have to do. We write it in so that we can share data. But what do you do when your data is an audio-visual recording? How do you de-identify it? Well, we made the Red Hen anonymizer and the Red Hen protocol for de-identifying visual recordings. Pick any computer-generated face. It doesn't belong to anybody. Take any video, and I do mean any video.
He has in the channel, and his remote balance is my balance.
Impose a face on it. I have picked a computer-generated face that resembles the original, but I could have done anything. And de-identify the voice with the voice transformer.
He has in the channel, and his remote balance is my balance.
This runs on OpenPose.
He has in the channel, and his remote balance is my balance.
If you really need de-identification,
He has in the channel, and his remote balance is my balance.
you just give them the skeleton and the voice. Now, that may seem interesting, but the very interesting thing is the year I spent wrestling with my IRB on when can you use this? When can you share data? When can you make an open data set and give it to everybody all around? And they didn't want to do it. Their first question is, well, hasn't some other ethics board or IRB already done this? And I said, no, it's you. I'm me. You have to do this. And of course, all the ethical concerns came up. But we now have a statement. So the answer to you is yes, we have a statement from a major research university on de-identifying audio-visual data and how that can help us be more like physicists. Go read all about it. Searching big data. Well, OpenPose, for instance, produces just JSON, those skeletons with color-coded arms and stuff, just for you. Behind the scene, it's all numbers in JSON. You can think of these as vectors, if you are familiar with that. What that means is they're mathematical numbers, they're patterns of numbers. So if you can figure out the trigonometry of the gesture, then you can just go looking for it in the data. So for example, if you want to know if somebody's looking full frontally at the camera or at you, well, you have the line segment between the pupils of the eye, and you have the line segment of the nose. So if the line segment of the nose bisects the line segment between the eyes, and this is, freshman high school trigonometry, right? Then that works for anything. If they're here, if they're backed off, if they're on a side, if they're upside down. So if you can do the mathematics, you can go looking for the mathematics and find the gestures. And so you can take stuff like this. This is the Ellen data set put together by Peter Uhrig and Yao Tong under the direction of Alan Schenke. So we could do this on this, but in fact, in the workshop just 2 days ago, we saw that the Erlangen team at FAO is doing just this, and in fact had presentations on picking out particular kinds of gestures, like, this close, on the basis of the mathematics. But in order to do that, you have to yourself get the mathematical characterizations, maybe do a symbolic search, but in fact what we would do now is take clips of various gestures and train a machine learning model on that and say, hi, can you extract the mathematics? Can you learn how to do this? So there's a bunch of work here. You can make automatic recognizers, go to Red Hen, other people are making data sets. Here's the Castle data set, which is sort of Big Brother video recording 24/7 of 14 people in a house engaged and so. And of course, you're doing this here in the Netherlands, famously. So there was a workshop, working on how to capture dialogue gestures through contrastive learning. They used STGCNs, those are spatiotemporal graphical convolutional networks, because some of the other things only work frame by frame, so they're not so good at capturing the temporal component of gestures. It was a multi-data pipeline presentation on the tools that they offer to you. So speech analysis, fabulous speech analysis, Elan in audio transcription, open pose, blah, blah, you've heard all about it. So you can run your videos through the multi-data pipeline, and you can see on your left, for example, this TED Talk where you get the open pose, you get heat maps for the gesture positioning, the audio and the transcript going into Elan, an elaborate speech analysis from intensity or intonation and pitch and things like that. And so you can also look at the Metal workshop. There's been one, there's going to be one in October. Fabulous services these are essentially co-pilots for the gesture researcher, do lots of kinds of things. Now, co-pilots is a word dear to me because I work in linguistics, I work in constructions. Large language models don't understand language, they don't think, they don't understand gesture, they don't think. You can call it intelligence if you like. It's very, very, very impressive. We know exactly how they work. I can train you in what a transformer is. None of that is what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is these are systems that have been trained on more data than all the linguists who have ever lived could be aware of, much less study, if they had 100 lifetimes. And if these things are going and if these things are going to succeed, then at least in the eyes of a cooperative user, they have to be able to mimic linguistic production. Otherwise, we think they fit. Well, so somewhere in that morass, and believe me, it's huge, there must be some kind of capturing of patterns. And that's what linguists do. We look for patterns. And it frequently takes your whole life to notice that a pattern works in a certain way. All linguists will tell you how long they studied something and what bad ideas they had and how they finally came to a certain kind of analysis. Well, can we trick these large language models into helping us find patterns? So we make FrameNet, conceptual frames, Chuck Fillmore, Tiago Torrent, global FrameNets. There are only 1,400 that have been done meticulously by hand. Can we train the LLM on FrameNet and use prompts and context to say, hi, can you suggest more frames? Can you suggest lexical units for these frames? Can you help us out? Can you propose things to us? And the answer is absolutely yes. So we wrote a whole book about it. And we talk about how to prompt the thing, how not to prompt the thing. I mean, the models will change, but this is sort of high-level strategy for the linguist, the pilot, to have synthetic agents that help the pilot do the work. That's a co-pilot. The co-pilot should never sit in the pilot's seat, but the co-pilots can really do great things for you in looking for constructions and finding counterexamples and proposing completions, right? So we've got a whole book about it, and we have a place that will train you about prompting and ask you for your prompts. So I'm proposing a research program, but I'm not proposing it because it's already in full scale, as you have seen from these various workshops. in which we have co-pilots for gesture research, synthetic agents to help gesturers. So when I was asked to come and talk about this topic, I thought I would come and talk about vision transformers and hybrid transformers with convolutional neural networks and JustFormer and so on. But no, that's now obsolescent because there's better stuff, as you heard at 2:10 today from Kate Carter. Kate, please wave your hand. If you want to, Kate will answer all questions, okay? So she is using Gemini and the Google API and programming it. And if you want to find out more about this, just shoot the QR code or go find Kate Carter, in which you take, what do? Well, you take videos, they're cut to one actor, one gesture, a certain size. She has written Python scripts that then arrange for prompting to feed into Gemini. This is model 2.5. That does gesture analysis for your manual validation and gives you statistical analyses of the results. You can find this on Kate's GitHub. Just shoot the QR code. So she ran this video.
I wasn't nominated, so.
Well, she pumps this through, and as you saw, it does a fairly impressive analysis. It's a co-pilot, right? So it picks out, it does wonderful timestamping of the gesture, of the preparation, of the onset, of the hold, of the release, and it proposes various kinds of analyses. I'll move on to the hot stuff and say, and I understand this is a little controversial, I expect there will be questions. The models that we're now doing this with include ChatGPT 4.0, Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Opus 4. They have strengths and weaknesses. The workflow for these kinds of things would be, you have an AI to a long tier. You prompt the AI for analysis. Of course, this can happen in the background. You don't have to sit there and do it individually. No, you can go to the conference dinner and it will go through 200 videos for you while you're having wine. But this does require expert prompts. Produces a code snippet. You would use a Python bridge, mumbo jumbo. You need a Python script to convert the AI-generated CSV to an EAF. You tell it to loop through each row. One of the nice things about these agents is they work all the time, 24/7. They never go to sleep. They're always very happy. Tell it to process all rows, review it, and refine and elan. And in the morning, you wake up, or maybe the afternoon, you wake up and there it all is. So this is a kind of new paradigm, human in the loop. Gemini to elan requires custom scripts to act and bridges between the AI and the elan. So Kate's analysis produced analysis of the body and hands of Christoph Waltz here. But so I just went right back in and said, okay, give me all the stuff on the face. So it does. At approximately the 0.01 mark, coinciding with blah, blah, fleeting eyebrow raise adds a nuance of blah, 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 blah. Now, stay with me. You may have all heard that just 2 weeks ago, Judge Alsop, district judge, ruled that science is good, but theft is bad. So if you have the legal right to scholarship, intellectual property, which you can get like Google Books, or you can license it, or you can buy it, or you can get it from a library. If you have the legal right to see it, then training AI on the intellectual property is extraordinary transformational work, legal and allowed, but pirating it is evil and you will be punished, okay? So Red Hin Lab has always been covered by Section 108 of the US Copyright Act. Judge Alsop didn't even have to cite Section 108. He did it 107. Well, I happen to own lots of these great books and articles and so on in gesture studies. In fact, I own my friend Alan Chinky's book, Handbook of Gesture Studies. I got lots of them too, right? And I have them all in digital form, although it's perfectly legal if I have it in physical form for me to cut it and scan it and have a digital. Yeah, okay, so Red Hen's relationship, thank you, Red Hen's relationship with Gemini is that nothing I give it will be saved or used to train its models. I have a legal relationship now. If you, for some reason, don't trust a multinational American-based tech corporation, come on, what are you going to do? Okay, but if you don't, I can run this locally with open source models in Case HPC, my high-performance computing servers. I can also run it on a $3,000 low-energy NVIDIA Spark machine, petaflop machine, and by locally, I mean without connectivity to the web or cellular, right? So we're very sensitive to data protection, but I gave it Alan's book. And this is the sum prompt, the total prompt. Use the methods and theories and tools from the uploaded handbook to analyze thoroughly the uploaded 6-second video for gestures, including face, hands, and body. It says, of course, multimodal 6 will follow Adam Kendon and David McNeil. Here's a metaphor of gesticulation, kinematic analysis, gesture phase, following Kendon, preparation from point 8 to 1.2, speaker's hands begin at resting position. Stroke appears here, about chest high. Hand shape is this, hands are open, fingers loosely splayed, a flat hand configuration. Orientation, motion, synchronization. The stroke is perfectly timed to coincide with the stress syllable of the keyword in the utterance nominated. The tight synchronization, hold, retraction, semantic classification on Kendon's continuum, it is this, on McNeil's dimensions, it is this, lack of agency, helplessness, the speaker is physically, goes through the modulated affect, lower face, it's doing this on the facial action coding system, picking out the different parts, upper face, ironic resignation, speaker's body has this relation to multimodal synthesis, blah, 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 blah. The result is a communicative active, remarkable efficiency, and so on. Now notice it's going to get some things wrong. It's a co-pilot. The question is, can you train it to do a lot of your work for you? Is it better than a high school student? And you should understand the high school students near my house. It's not just that I have graduate, postdoc graduate, and undergraduate students around the world using this stuff to do gesture analysis now, but the high school students who want to do a science fair in the high school, Shaker Heights High School across the street, found me and said, will you help us use this stuff to analyze gesture? I said, sure, I know they're teachers. This is being done everywhere, I acknowledge that. So can we train a gesture research co-pilot? Now, I have to say, at this point, we had a Red Hen Lab video conference the other day, and 2 days ago, which is when I did this. And they said, well, what are you going to say to the gesture folk? And so I showed them a couple of slides, and there was a silence. And one of them said, Mark, they're going to stone you. And then the next person said, no, it's the Netherlands. They're very nice. And then someone said, and it's the gesture study people in the Netherlands. Well, they're very nice. And then somebody said, and besides, they will understand that what you're talking about, because they're so smart, is that what you want to do is train a co-pilot by taking analyses that brilliant gesture researchers have done and get it to try to imitate this best it can. And then when you've done it, you give them a new one that you already know about and see what it does. And then you correct it. And then you give it a new one that you've already done. And then you correct it, and you correct it, and you correct it, and you iterate, and you've done all the work, and you're doing all the work. Again, you adjust the Copilot. I recommend using SEAL, self-adapting language models. This paper was published not a month ago. So also hot out of the oven, this is going to be my last bit, but this is really pretty hot. Synthetic data. I have often filmed gesture researchers exhibiting a gesture we want to explain, but that's not ecologically valid. That's not real behavior. That is, there are threats to validity there, threats to external validity, right? Also experimenter effects. They know that they're in a Okay, synthetic data is, or can be, based on real, authentic data. And what you're getting from the synthetic data is a statistical compression across real data. So what it actually is, its status. So one of the things that you could do with this kind of stuff is you could generate in Rio on vacation while you're sipping a caipirinha. You could generate all the data you want. And then you could give it to the machine gesture bot that analyzes the data until you hit upon a hypothesis and insight, test it more through synthetic data, go on and see, if you come up with something that then you think is worth all the expense of getting behavioral data or neuroscience data or something for. So this stuff is really easy to produce. Right? New York Times ran an article the other day.
So while we sleep, our brains are actually incredibly active, sorting and consolidating memories and information.
Some of this is natural, some is artificial. Anecdotally, everyone guesses that the model with the sway and the spectacular city in the background and the choreographed birds and the release of the balloon is the AI. And the other guy is real. It's the reverse. The guy doing the TED Talk is AI generated. The model is the real one. So you can get all this. You can run it through the pipeline. So just as gesture studies are at an inflection point of the theory of the basic operations, of the mental operations that make gesture possible, like blending. It's also at a methodological inflection point of research networks. We always adapt under technology, which include not only other people, but also synthetic agents. This is sometimes called co-intelligence. That may just be a presumptuous, vainglorious term. Call it whatever you like. So my proposal for you to consider is that the field of gesture studies stands at a theoretical inflection point of investigating the mental operations that make gesture possible. And it is also at a methodological inflection point considering the future of research in this glorious field under the development of new agents, some of whom are not actually people. And I'd like to say thank you on behalf of all the little red hens, and I hope we've passed the audition.